Hello and welcome to the Biz Coach Show, hosted by My Biz Coaches and presented by the TLG Group. Our show is focused on giving entrepreneurs the edge they need to succeed. Let's meet our guest for today's episode. Our guest today is Carly Whiteside, the owner of Copper Wren Law, the first 100% woman-owned alternative business structure law firm specializing in estate planning, probate litigation, and trust administration. Learn more at copperwrenlaw.com. Well, Carly, it is great to have you with us today. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you, David?
I'm doing really good. Yeah, thanks for asking. And Eric, how are you doing today?
Doing excellent, David. Thank you.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, always good to hang out with you. And Carly, very excited to have you on the show with us. We're going to be talking a bit about your journey, starting a law firm. But I figure before we dive into that, would love to learn just a little bit more about your journey, if you don't mind sharing that with us.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me today. I started a alternative business structure law firm, which basically means a non-attorney owned law firm in Arizona, the first 100% woman owned. A lot of the other ones have multiple people involved in ownership. And it just takes a lot of filling out applications and waiting and going in front of the Supreme Court and getting licensed, which you can see right behind me. And we have to get that renewed every single year. So this is an ongoing licensure that I have to keep up with. And then we have audits every 6 months.
Wow. Awesome. And what kind of led you into, wanting to go the direction of law and then eventually starting your own firm?
So ever since I was little, I wanted to be an attorney. And then, as we all know, life happens, and I just couldn't go to law school. It wasn't in the cards. So I went and got my paralegal degree, started working at firms, worked for the AG's office here in Arizona, worked for a couple of private firms, did some litigation funding work. And I just really liked the part where I could help people. These are usually times, especially in probate, which is what we work in, where these are super emotional times. People don't know what to do. There's lots of factors at play, and it's hard for them to figure out what they actually need to happen to move forward while dealing with family dynamics. So this is kind of why I gravitated towards this area of the law. It requires probably a little bit more handholding than something like contracts or real estate or something transactional like that.
Okay, that makes sense. And I mean, certainly, you could have continued working for other firms, but what was like that catalyst for you that made you think, man, I want to start my own firm. I want to do this alternative business structure thing.
Honestly, I just kind of looked around and was like, this can be done a better way. There's lots of things happening that are wasteful, wasting time, wasting resources. Clients can get a better experience. Just things can be streamlined a lot. And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna figure it out. And that's kind of what led me to look into, how can I make this happen? And Arizona and Utah are the only two states in the union that allow non-attorneys to even, put their toe in the water in this kind of venture. So I'm very lucky that I'm here. Otherwise, this, would have to go a different way. But I wanted to make it better. I just wanted to do things better.
Awesome. Makes sense. Well, when I hear standing in front of the Supreme Court, that makes me a little nervous. So as you're talking about the process you had to go through and to get this structure set up, I'm curious kind of how did you prepare for that? Like, what was that process like to go through this from start to finish?
So it was about a 4-month lead time to even get in front of them. So I did the
Wow.
research, started the LLC, got that handled. I actually engaged the leading ethics attorney in Arizona who sits on the board, who decided that an alternative business structure should be a thing in Arizona. So I had a lot of support from her. She helped me and then the attorney with our application. Part of this process is I do have to have something called a compliance attorney. And their role is basically to make sure that just because I own a law firm, I don't practice law, which I have no interest in. Pass. And we're doing everything how we need to do. She helped us along the way, kind of letting us know this is what they're looking for. I believe the application is about 30 pages, and then he and I each had to do a 15-page individual application. They do a full comprehensive background check on us, like from day one. There was some emailing back and forth like, hey, what's this? What's that? Just little things. And then they let you know when you get to go in front of the committee, usually know a couple weeks before. They meet once a month. So if you don't make it on the agenda, then you're like, okay, I hope we're on the next one. And it's basically the order that the applications come in and the investigations are completed. So we got notice in December that we were going to be on the January agenda.
Wow. That is quite the process.
Yes.
Talk about commitment.
It is. It is. It is.
That's awesome.
Well, once you went through that, right, and you're on the other end of it, approved, right, which is awesome, and all the hard work that went in to get there. Then there's, starting the business itself and growing it, right? So I'd be curious, what were some of the early challenges that you faced starting the firm once you got past that approval phase?
Starting the firm, it was you don't know what you don't know. So we can, in theory, look at everything and have a checklist of, okay, we know we're going to need A, B, and C. But then as we move through, we're like, oh, we're going to need D, E, and F. So it was just kind of addressing those things as they came up and not letting them stop us, but just more as being like, okay, here's what we need to do. Let's just get through it. Let's move on to the next. And then it has also been, part of the challenge is getting our name out there and letting people know we're here to help, come down here, we're here, find us. And unfortunately, part of the challenge in our specific industry is we're pretty saturated in Mesa because we have a very large senior population. So good news, bad news, most of our clients are over, 55, 60, that kind of age. So when you have a lot, it's like, how do you make yourself stand out? How do you say, we're different? So that's kind of been the biggest challenge, I would say, in starting this, is just the awareness part for the public.
Makes sense. Yeah, I know, Eric, you definitely focus on that a lot, right? What's that? You've got a special phrase for it. It's not USP. What do you guys call it?
Market dominating position.
There you go. Yep. So figuring out that market dominating position, that can take some time, right? I don't know if you got any perspective on that, Eric, but how long it takes to kind of develop that and really kind of see that impact once you started the business.
Yeah, it's a valid point. And one of the conversations that Carly had in our first meeting together was, what is it that sets you apart? What do you do that's better than everybody else? Or what can you hang your hat on and say, hey, this is what I do. This is how we're different. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing. And that's what compelled me to introduce you and Carly and ask her to be on the show, because quite honestly, her story is very compelling and in and of itself is part of the market dominating position.
Right.
She's so passionate about law that she decided to create a law firm, even though she was not a lawyer, not skilled in the law, having as a background. So when having worked in the firm, she's like, this is the other piece that really intrigued me. She's like, she said to me, I'm trying to remember specifically, but it was like, I saw how it was being done and it was being done right. And I knew I could do it better. That right there was super compelling to me. And I'm like, that says a lot about the integrity of an individual. And consequently, if somebody's going to be in law, I want them to be an integrous person, right? But it's an interesting, her process. But to answer your question, the market dominating position is challenging because it is an iterative process. It takes likely weeks to find an initial one to really kind of hang your hat on and say, okay, this is what it is. And then what happens is a few months go by, you've been saying it enough times and you start tweaking it a little bit, you start adjusting it a little bit. And then, maybe you hear somebody else's perspective or somebody gives you some feedback on it and you're like, oh, I actually kind of like that. And then you twist it a little bit. And realistically, it could take a year to really fine tune to the point where you're like, okay, this is who we are. This is what we stand for. This is what we want. But it's an iterative process, right? You find a baseline and then you work from there. I liken it to when I wrote my book, the goal setting book, and he talked about what's your ideal story, what's your, who are you, what's your ideal vision of what you look like 10 years from now. And I would tell people all the time, I'm like, look, you're going to write this. You're going to look at it in 2 weeks and go, what was I thinking? And I'm going to go back and I'm going to tweak it because life challenges us to look at things and say, okay, well, this is different, than what I originally thought. This is the mind frame I was in that day, this day, this day. Now you take 10 of those circumstances together, and now you've got a better cumulative end result. And I think that that's really what the market dominating position really becomes, is that iterative process. But to add to that, the result is almost immediate once you clearly define how you're going to impact people. Because what will happen is you'll immediately start having these conversations and share with people what you do, and they're going to be like, oh wow, that speaks to me. And as soon as you see people light up when you say the things that you say, that's when you hit a chord. And now you have a better idea of who your ideal client is. And then you go deeper and deeper into that category, and you find more people like that. And that's when things really kind of come together.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Great perspective. I'd be curious, Carly, as you were, going through, okay, you're starting to get clients established, what makes you different, certainly within the realm of a law firm, right? There's got to be some additional compliance or regulatory challenges. So anything in particular that you had to work to overcome in those kind of early days and weeks?
Yeah. So we definitely knew we wanted to do things differently and better, but, we were starting from scratch. So we had to make sure as a firm, our engagement agreements were compliant and up to standard, and they had all of the necessary information in there. So we were taking some CLEs that were specific to our area of the law, found out some more information, continuing to educate ourselves. So we tweaked them a little bit. We definitely learned some things that this is a lot of chasing. Nobody wants to talk about dying. Nobody wants to talk about their money. And what do we talk about? Where's your money going to go when you die? So it's like literally the worst thing ever. Everybody's like, oh no, if I talk to you about it, I'll die quicker. Like it's this very subconscious kind of thing. Everybody knows they need it, but it's like, oh, I can do it later. I'll do it later. I'm not there yet. Like, I don't have an illness. I don't have a life event that's forcing me to come in here and get this done. Like, oh no, I'm in a home now, or I have cancer, or like there's no triggering event. So people are like, no, that's later. And unfortunately, what we see a lot of the times is everybody's like, yeah, they said they were going to do it. And then we're doing their probate and there's nothing.
Yeah.
And that's when it gets a little wild, for sure. It can anyway.
Yeah. Crazy. Well, as you talk about that, right, estate planning, probate, what impact has specializing in just those aspects of the law had on the growth of your business?
I think since we are so new, we just kind of we're in month 6 right now. So we are a newer baby business, right? Like Eric said, this can take a year, which we fully anticipated. Like we've got to build our presence. We've got to build our reputation. We've got to show people, yes, we are different. Because you can tell people all day long, yeah, we're different. But if you don't do anything about it, it's just idle chit chat. So I think by doing a really good job for the clients that we have serviced, that word of mouth is really our golden ticket. Because when people find, an accountant, an attorney, financial planner, those kind of trusted fiduciary positions, and you do a good job and you're straight up and you don't bleed them dry, they will tell everybody they know, you need to go over there. They do a good job. They don't charge you a bunch of money and leave you hanging, and they don't call you back. So that's kind of been our focus, is just doing what we do every single time and being as consistent as possible. And we are working with people. So not every time it's going to be 100% rainbows and butterflies and sunshine. But we definitely try to do things like the most cost-effective way, because that's a big concern. People hear attorney and they go, oh my God, I'm going to have to give my kidney. I can't, that's not for me. So we're trying to kind of change the narrative of, no, you can have access to legal services, and it's good legal services. It's not some dude in a basement that's like, yeah, I got 4 wives and I'm paying my alimony. Come on down. So, we're trying to basically just do a really good job and meet people with where they're at.
Awesome. Yeah, Eric, I know that's something you talk about a lot is really kind of figuring out that specialization, right? Instead of, going broad, go narrow, and
Yep.
initially when you're starting a business. So any perspective on that?
Yeah, yeah. It's funny as you mentioned that. I'm thinking to myself, what are some of the other areas they could look at? No, but yeah, to your point, one of the things that we've talked about on here before is the first year. It's all about what's the primary service I can offer, and just focus on that for as long as I can. And typically, depending on who you listen to, you have one service or one primary service, and that's what you go until you hit, let's say, $1 million in gross revenue. And then once you hit that point, then you start adding in incremental services. However, there are things especially in the law, because there's a lot of different variations of what they do with preparation. So when you're going through that, there's a handful of other categories you can kind of look at, and you can be extensions of the service. But the discipline of staying true to your primary service also helps in the market dominating position, because you make it very clear, this is what we do. We do it better than everybody else, and this is why we do it better than everybody else. Again, that goes right into your marketing, and then allows you to kind of use that to drive home the message to your clients, right? That when somebody reads the marketing that you do, it could be you in a networking event. It could be something that you put on your website or your social media content. But whatever it is, when people read that message and they're like, "Oh, I feel like Harley is talking to me," that's when you've got that ideal client in mind. The messaging is landing, and you're going to get more of those people. So if that's your ideal client, then that's you hit the chord, you hit the right spot, and then you kind of go deeper on that. But that's why we challenge people to really stick with one service in the beginning, or one primary focus, because the better you get at that, when you add the second and tertiary products or services, you now have the ability to extend on that. But you've got a very good idea of who your primary client is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Carly, you talked about, month 6, I think, right? So you're growing, you're, dialing in exactly what makes you different. You're getting that word of mouth. What other methods have you utilized to kind of help grow that client base?
So I have joined our Mesa Chamber of Commerce. That one has been a really nice resource. I've been able to connect with other professionals. As I mentioned, financial planners, they're always looking for a good estate planning attorney that they can refer to that's not going to ignore their clients, which has been the biggest thing I've heard is, yeah, I have this guy, but I send my clients and then they tell me 3 weeks later, no one will call me back.
Wow.
And my response is, it must be so nice to be so busy you can just ignore people. That's super cool, super cute. So that's been great, just kind of meeting other professionals and talking to them. Everybody's in different stages of business. I've met people that are 15 years in. I've met people that are 2 months in, and everything in between. So it's been really nice just kind of getting other entrepreneurs input on my business. I'm like, hey, tell me what you think. You don't know me. You don't have a stake in this game. You don't care. Like, hurt my feelings. Tell me. And then I have joined a couple of more exclusive marketing groups and kind of branched out and tried to use those and use the connection in those networks to kind of say, hey, if you know anybody, if they just want information, let us know. We're happy to provide that. That's definitely something that we do that's a little bit different than most law firms is, providing information, giving people the tools to make the decision, because we can tell them all day long, yeah, you need to do your estate plan. But if they don't want to do it, they're not going to do it. But it's like, you know what? We're fine. We told them. Ball's in their court. So that's just kind of how I've been using my connections. Has been a little bit difficult just because we are just 2 of us. So I'm trying to do all the admin, do all the paralegal stuff while still getting out there and, shaking hands and kissing babies and whatever that is. And but yeah. It's been good to meet other people, especially, like Eric and yourself. It's been great.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, yeah, that sounds awesome. Those are great tactics. I'd be curious, we've talked about, trying to get better brand awareness. Certainly the whole just getting the business going and going through Supreme Court and all that, that's a hurdle. Any other hurdles that you want to spotlight that you've had to overcome to get to this point?
Just
Or maybe
kinda
some
nav-
lessons, maybe
Huh?
some lessons you learned along the way.
Some lessons.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Probably that I intellectually knew that this was going to be a lot of work, but nobody really knows how much work it is till you get in it.
Mm,
So I'm like, wow,
yeah.
I feel like, I'm doing all of these things that I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm not seeing it. Like it's not tangible yet because it's a process. And intellectually, I'm like, yeah, it's a process. We're only in month 6. We're doing great. Like it's fine. But on the inside, I'm like, I just want it to work. Why isn't it working? And I think a lot of business owners can kind of feel that way. Is you feel like you're just pouring everything into it all the time, and it just takes a minute, and you have to kind of give yourself a little grace and patience. Like I am doing everything I can. So I think that's probably one of the biggest hurdles that I've had. I am definitely a type A personality. I know you would never guess. Um, and so I'm very much one of those people that has a list. I get my list done and then I go to my next list. And starting this business, there has been things on the list that just take time and I have to keep coming back to it. And I'm like, God, I feel like I just did this, but it's like, no, it's just the next part of my list has turned into subsections of the list.
Yeah.
So I think it's mostly been like an inner journey of, nope, you're doing what you can. Just let it go. There's nothing you're going to do about it right now. Just keep one foot in front of the other.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I would add to that, Carly, is that to your point, it's that there's the process, right? And you plug into the process and you do the things in your process. To your point, keep checking things off the list, keep doing the things you need to be doing, and then trust the process, which is probably the hardest part. It's funny, as you made the comment and you're like, I just want this to work. Well, the irony is I literally had a session, a new onboarding conversation with somebody 2 weeks ago who's been in business for 7 years who feels the same way. So if that makes you feel any better or worse.
It makes me feel better.
And it's, I think you mentioned earlier, I mean, the first thing you said is, hey, I intellectually I knew this, but emotionally, I think that's the key, right? Is emotionally, I didn't realize what it was going to look like, the process. And I remember years and years ago, I came across this cartoon, and it was what people think of business success. And it's like a straight line from bottom left to top right, and it goes like this. And then the journey's really like, and it's like this squiggly line going in all different directions. And I think that everybody gets into it. They know it looks like the squiggly line that looks like a bowl of spaghetti, but in their head, they're still envisioning, I'm going to have this direct line and it's going to progress the way that it needs to. And I would say even after 4 years as a business coach, there's still the days where I feel like I took 2 steps forward and 2 steps back the same day. And you're working through that, but that's the entrepreneur's journey. And that's the challenge that a lot of business owners don't know and won't know until they experience it. And that's really, you could coach to it all day long, quite honestly, but I couldn't prepare you mentally for what you're going to get yourself into, because the reality is, first of all, everybody responds differently, but additionally, I could, like you said, intellectually, you knew it was going to be hard work, but you're still doing it. And you're like, man, when is this going to break through for me? When is this really going to kind of take off the way I'd hoped for? And I think that that's the challenge that a lot of owners all feel. And as I said, literally, I had somebody who's 7 years in the business and what they've been doing, and they're very good at what they do. But 7 years into it, they have different problems, to be fair, but they're still frustrated, right? Because the business has evolved to a certain level, a certain degree, and now they're struggling with something else that's developed over time, and they'll have to work through that. And so now they've asked me to help them progress through that. But I think the key is to understand is that you do what you need to do, and you stay consistent with that activity. If you stay focused on the activity, the results pay dividends. It's the people who get frustrated and then stop doing the things. That's when things come back and bite them in the butt.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Carly, I'm curious if you had to do it all over again. So rewind the clock, 6+ months, anything you do differently?
Are we talking about the business or like
Yeah,
that's pretty broad?
yeah, the
No,
business. Sorry, sorry.
I'm just kidding. Um, I would do it again. I mean, I told Eric this. I am the worst employee to have because I have ideas and I have opinions. And I was like, gee, I need to work for myself because yikes. Like I'm upsetting everybody around me all the time because I can't help it. I just can't. And that was a big factor of like, I need to be able to just be accountable to myself. And when there's an issue, look at the attorney Dan and say, like, Dan, you need to fix this. And he says, okay. And then we fix it right then. There's not this lingering kind of out there like, oh yes, management will talk about it and we'll get back to you, this like mystical, magical date. Um, so I would 100% do it again. Even though it's a different kind of stress and emotional, stress, like you talked about, Eric. Honestly, I'm way happier than I was and way less. It's the stress is different. It was eating me alive working other places. So I think like for my personal life, as a mother, it's made me a better mom. It's made me a better partner. It's made me a better business partner. Like it's been hard, but it's definitely for me been worth it for sure. And I recognize this is not for everybody. It's
Mm.
not.
Valid point.
All right. Well, I think my last question. I'm putting myself in the shoes of somebody who's watching this and maybe thinking, this sounds really interesting. I want to pursue a similar path to what Carly's talking about here in this alternative business structure law firm. What advice would you give somebody who's maybe thinking about that?
I would tell them, don't think you know how to do it by yourself. You need to get as many resources as you can along the way to help you with this. I had an ethics attorney. I had an employment law attorney. I had an accountant. I had, an LLC attorney. Like I had all of these people that I pulled from because I said, I want to do this, but these are not my areas. So I think the biggest thing is to know when you don't know and you don't try to just figure it out. You can to a degree, but at a certain point, you've got to realize, wow, I'm out of my depth. I need help. And that's okay. You're allowed. You're allowed. Nobody knows everything. And if they tell you they do, run because yikes. And also just like you said, trust process, be patient. Unfortunately, this process, they are not very good at giving you updates. There was many times that Dan and I would sit there and look at each other, be like, did they get our email answer? I feel like it's been weeks. Are we getting on the agenda yet? Like we've said everything. What's happening? So that's probably like the worst part is just like they'll get to you. Just you gotta just take it easy. But it's also hard because you can't do anything until you get that licensing. You're iced out to a certain degree. So yeah, I would just tell people get as many experts as you can in what you don't know and be patient and know that yes, it is working even if it feels like it's not. You'll get there eventually.
Awesome. Well, I love that. Great advice. Well, as we kind of wrap up here, we've talked just a little bit about the law firm and what you do, but anything else that you want to share about Copper Wren Law?
I mean, right now, like Eric said, we're focusing mostly on estate planning. So trusts, powers of attorneys, wills, that kind of thing. Just making sure that whoever comes in the door, it is a very personalized process. So if anybody ever gives you a general, like everybody should have a trust, everybody should have a will, like you've got your own set and your own goals. So we really focus on making sure that we are accomplishing our clients' goals in the best way possible for them. It's definitely not a one size fits all. I can't just say, yeah, we'll do it for this because you don't even meet with the attorney. We know it's fine. Everybody gets this one. And I think that's probably the biggest thing with us that's different is we really take the time to know our clients. What are you really trying to accomplish here? And some of this stuff goes back 30, 40 years when people come in. They're like, I have a kid I don't talk to. It's sad. It happens. But it's like it's important to them that the other kids are taken care of, So we really just try to take a very methodical, personalized approach rather than, yeah, get in line, churn them and burn them. Like just get them in and out. It's fine. We'll handle it. You're good to go. And we really want to make sure that our clients are educated to make these decisions, because it is a lot of information. It's a lot of things to ask people. It's stuff all the time. Oh, I didn't even think of that. Yes, that's why we're asking you. So we really take the time, and I don't ever limit attorney time. I have got clients that need 45 minutes with Dan, and they are golden, and they ride off into the sunset, and they're happy as a clam. I've got clients that need hours and hours because they've got things. So that's the other part, is some firms will limit that, and we don't think it's right, because this is a very important thing that people are setting up, and it's important enough to get in here and do. So.
Yeah. I ironically, I look back, and Carly, you and I discussed a little bit about my personal circumstance when my mom passed away. And, I mentioned that she had shared with myself, specifically my brother and I, when she passed, we were trying to deal with all the things that were, and I was certain that she said she had a will, that she'd completed a will. And, we would look through the entire house. We never found anything. We would look for, where she might've even stored it, or offsite or anything like that, but we never found anything. And going through the hassle of cleaning up the messes, right? And getting title of the car and the house. And, I told you my circumstance, it was a better situation in our particular case because we purchased the house. But, the other things that were, that had to be dealt with, all while trying to deal with the emotional trauma of having lost a loved one. Right. And it's crazy to me that people have those different perspectives. I literally have spoke to people, and they're like, they'll figure it out. And I'm like, but that is such a short-sighted perspective. Having dealt with it personally, I look at it, I'm like, no, the last thing I want is for my kids to have to worry about anything if something happens to my wife and I, or for my wife, and it's, when I think about what you do and the approach that you take for your clients, in our conversation, it was really compelling to me. It's like, this is important for people to know and understand. And, helping you spread that message is important, because I think that's a service that people need. But more importantly, I love the way you go about it. As I said, I was really impressed with your professionalism, the way you carried yourself, and your everything behind your intention for your business. And I think that's a great statement. And I think it's valid for everybody to hear, is, you're going above and beyond to make sure that people can afford, not necessarily afford, but can get to the service that they need and that they're entitled to make those important life decisions.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Carly, appreciate you sharing all the insights with us. I think if anybody wants to learn more about you or Copper and Law, head over to copperandlaw.com. Is that the best place to find you?
It is. Yep. We've got our bios up there, contact information, all that jazz. And then we are on all social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, all that jazz. So
awesome. Sounds great. Well, thanks again. Great to have you with us. Eric, before we wrap up, what's new at My Biz Coaches? You finally going to let the secret out now that we got Carly here? He's been working on this special project. He's been keeping it secret. Is this the day, Eric?
Today is not the day, David.
Oh, man.
Come on. I don't even know what it is, and I want to know now.
Dang. All right. Sorry. I thought it'd be the day, but all right. Well, Eric, then what's new? What can you share about what you're doing at My Biz Coaches?
Well, I was going to say it's episode 30, and I'm pretty excited about that.
There you go. Okay. Yeah, that is big. That is a big milestone.
That's right. It's 30 episodes now. We our discipline of keeping up with this program. The value we're getting from this, and the people. It's funny because I literally had somebody this week reach out and they read the newsletter that we started a couple of weeks ago, and they responded to the newsletter. And I said, well, if you like the newsletter, check out the show. And they're like, oh, you have a podcast? And I'm like, yeah. So I sent them the link. They responded back and they said, it's amazing. I watched like 9 shows. I binge watched. And I got to be honest with you, David, I'm like, I don't know if I could handle 9 shows of David back to back to back.
Well, Eric, geez, that's a lot.
Exactly. But yeah, he was like, yeah, I binge watched 9 shows in a row. I'm like, that's amazing. That's awesome. We really appreciate the support.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's awesome. Oh, cool.
No,
okay.
News to come shortly. Maybe it'll be around my birthday.
Okay. All right. Well, you never know. You never know. So
That's right.
Good stuff. Well, Eric, always great hanging out with you. Carly, once again, great to have you with us. And thanks for your time today.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for having me. It was fun. It's
Awesome.
always hard to talk about yourself, so thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cool. Well, and to those watching and listening, we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks, everyone.